All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors of this morning's shir. Thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Iyar, Menachem and Susie Schoenfeld for dedicating all of the shiur midrashos this month in memory of their grandparents, Moshe and Shimon Leif Halevi, Sarlea Bas Dov Ber, Menachem Mendel Ben Dov Ber, Sariyita Bas Yaakov Sender, Noach Ben Avram, Fega Bas Meir, David Shimon Ben Yisrael and Sarah Bas Yaakov. We thank our Week of Learning sponsor, Jack Bennett, for dedicating learning this week in memory of Sgan Uriel Peretz, who served as the platoon commander of the 51st Battalion of Golani and died in a Hezbollah ambush in southern Lebanon in 1998. We thank Adam and Leslie Rosen for dedicating all of the shiurim this week in honor of all the mental health care workers. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give them strength, support, and knowledge to care for their patients and themselves during this pandemic. We thank an additional Week of Learning sponsor, Yonasan and Rachel Wolf from New Jersey, with Hakaras Atov to the entire Kehila for providing Yonasan with a Zoom home away from home during the coronavirus shutdown. We thank our DAF sponsors, Josh and Malki Rosenblum, for their DAF during Sphira sponsorship, and Baruch Fischel and Sonia Kozlovsky and family in honor of Baruch Fischel's 66th birthday. Mazel tov to Baruch Fischel, Adnei ve'esim shanim tovos, and to Isaac and Brenda Samuels for dedicating the shir this morning in memory of Isaac's father, Avram Samuel, Avram ben Asher Anshel. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah and the families in Nechama. And Rabbi, with that, let us begin. So today's daf is Ayin Daled 74, but we are picking up on Ayin Gimel Amud Beis 73b, and I believe we left off with HaChoresh. We started this, but let's just start again at the two dots on Amud Beis. It is in the middle of the page, 73b, right across in Tosfos Zomer. So with that, let us begin. So HaChoresh. So Tana Achorish v'Achoper v'Achoris Kulam Alacha Achasin. So remember we read these lines, but let's just pick up here again. So remember again, if one plows, digs a hole, or goes ahead and creates a furrow, all of this is part of the malacha of Charisha, right? It's all part of the same malacha of Choresh. Amrav Sheshes, interesting case. Haiselo Gavshushis v'natla. Let's say a person had a mound of earth, and he went ahead and he leveled the mound. So what's the halacha? Babayis chay mishum bona, basad chay mishum choresh. So if he did this in the home, if he did in his home, he's chayiv because of bona, building. Because also remember again, in order to build, you have to level the ground. So if he did this inside of his home, ultimately again that is in malacha of binyan. Interestingly enough, basad, if he did this in the field, chayiv mishum choresh. Then ultimately, again, he is chayiv because of plowing. Because again, remember, in the field, in order to plow, you would have to first level out the ground. Amarava, haisela guma v'tamama. So what happens if a person had a pit, right? Now, not literally a pit, but like a hole, like a depression in the ground, in the floor. So then you filled it in. Babayis chay mishum bona. So if you did this in the house, you're chayiv because of bona. Basad mishum chorish. And if you did this in the field, you are chayiv ultimately again because of charisha, because of plowing. So Rabbi said this is actually really quite fascinating, because what you begin to see is the same act has a different identity depending where it is done. Right? So the same act, if done inside the home or if done in the field, could have two different classifications or categorizations. Again, halacha lamaisa, either way it's a malacha, but it's interesting to see different malacha in the house than out of the house. So the Gemara says, Amrabi Abba, hachofer guma b'Shabbos ve'notzarach alali afra. Rabbi asks, what happens if someone digs up a hole on Shabbos, but he doesn't need the dirt? He doesn't need the dirt. So I will say, so remember again, under normal circumstances, when you dig a hole, Rashi says, I'm sorry, said that wrong. Just the opposite. A person dug a hole, but he doesn't need the hole. All he needs is the dirt. Rashi says, for example, you want to use the dirt to cover waste. What's talacha? Pater alal. Ultimately, again, one is pater. Now, why Rabbi say? Because again, if you did this in the house, there's no binyan. It can't be called bona, because remember again, there's actually a destructive act. And if it's in the field, it can't be called choresh, because ultimately, again, having a hole like this in the middle of the field would actually be something that would be counterproductive. So therefore, you're potter. And even according to Rabbi Yehuda, who normally holds that even if you do a malacha not for its intended purpose, you're still going to be chayiv. So what's talacha? Hani mili mitakin. That's only if your act was constructive. However, hai mitkalkahu. But I will say this act of digging a hole in the ground, be it in the ground of your home or in the ground of the sadeh, is going to be something destructive. Okay, fine. Vakotzer. So we'll say what's next. So what comes out of there is just to understand that the same act of digging or filling in a hole in the home will usually be categorized as the malach of bona, of building, and in the field will ultimately be categorized as the malach of chorish, of plowing. Again, but if one digs a hole, but they don't need the hole, but they need the dirt, so everyone would agree that in that kind of situation, one would be potter. Why? Because even if you normally hold malacha shenetzricha legufa is chayiv, right? The malacha that you don't do for its intended purpose is going to be liable. That's only if the malacha is constructive. But in this case, it's deemed to be destructive. Next, hakotzer. So we'll say harvesting. Harvesting. Tana. Hakotzer v'habotzer v'hagodir v'hamasik v'aora kula malacha achos. So we'll say kotzer. Now this is actually interesting. If you look at Rashi for just a moment. So kotzer, harvesting. Goder, Rashi says, is the act of harvesting dates. Mosek is the act of harvesting olives. And ura b'te'enim. And ura is the act of harvesting figs. So we'll say these are all the same. So remember again, the malach of katsira specifically, as mentioned in the Mishnah, was harvesting of wheat. So lemaisa, all, if you do any act of harvesting, that all falls under the malacha of kotz. Amar Papa, Haiman deshada pisa ledikla va'asi tamri chayiv shtayim. So we'll say if somebody takes a clod of earth and he throws it at a date palm, and as a result he dislodges a cluster of dates, he is chayiv twice. Achas mishum tolish va'achas mishum mefarek. One because of tolish, right? Tolish also means the act of taking something or detaching something from the place where it grows. So you're actively going ahead and taking the dates from where they grow. And achos mishum mefarek. So we'll say mefarek is dash, right? Or threshing, extracting one thing from another. So he's understanding that the act of extracting the dates, ultimately again from the date palm, will also be mefarek. Okay, look at Rashi. First white line in the bottom of Rashi, mefarek. Told the dash. This is an offshoot of the malacha of threshing. Shemefarik tva mishibuleha. Lashon porik minachamar began b'tshuva seyin mishulam hagal matzasifine. So the Gemara says. So what are you doing in this case over here? Afzeh mefarik es hatmara mina machabdos. So to here you're extracting the dates from their shell or from the place where they grow. So the Gemara says, Rav Ashi amar ein derech talisha b'kach ve'ein derech prika b'kach. Rav Ashi disagrees. He says actually you won't be chayiv either way in this case. Why? Because this is not the normal way to detach dates. As I will say, remember again, as you've seen multiple times, on Shabbos, one is only chayiv if one performs the malacha in a normative fashion. So in general, how do you harvest dates? You take a ladder, right? You go up, or you shake the tree. But one thing is clear, which is the way no one says that the way you harvest dates is by throwing a clump of earth at the cluster of dates for it to fall down. So because that is a non-normative act, therefore one would not be chayiv on Shabbos. Again, you still can't do it, but lamaisa, if you did it, you would not be chayiv echatos. Amar Rava, hayman de kanef milcha mimilcha, so chayiv mishum ma'amer. So Rava said as follows. I'm sorry, ma'amer. So we'll say ma'amer means gathering together. So, right? So remember again, we'll say, think about this all in terms of wheat, right? They would gather the pile of wheat together. That is ma'amer. Amar Rava, hayman de kanef milcha mimilcha, so chayiv mishum ma'amer. So we'll say comes along Rava, and Rava says, if someone gathers salt from a salt ditch. So we'll say, what would you do in a salt ditch? You would put a pool of salt water, allow right under the sun, allow the sun to go ahead and cause the water to evaporate, and then I'm left just with salt. So we'll say the act of gathering salt into one area, says the Gemara, will be ma'amer. Abaye Amar says no. Ein imor ela begulei karka. He disagrees and he says the concept of ma'amer only applies to what? To items that grow from the ground. And since salt, of course, does not, quote-unquote, grow from the ground, therefore not subject to ma'amer. And Rabbi will say, this is very important, that indeed is halacha l'maisa, that one only violates the malacha of ma'amer ultimately, again, with items that grow from the ground. So were you to take something else and to put it in a pile, that would not be the malacha of ma'amer. Good. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Hazoreh, haborer, hatochin, v'hamarakid. So remember again, zoreh is winnowing, borer is separating, tochein is grinding, and marakid is sifting. So says the Gemara, hainu zoreh, hainu borer, hainu marakid. Winnowing, borer, separating, marakid, sifting are all one thing. Right? Tabbo said this is all the malacha of separating. All the malacha of separating. Now again, just so you understand, the av malacha of separating is dash, is threshing. That's the av malacha. That's the primary category. All of these ultimately, again, are an offshoot of dash. So the Gemara says, Abayi v'Rav Damri Tarvayu. This is very interesting. Kol milsa dehavi b'mishkan. Any malacha that they did in the Mishkan, top of Ayin Dalet Amud Aleph, Afal Gav Deike de Damula Chashivla. So we'll say, so the Abayi and Rav are just making a technical statement over here, which is as follows, which is any malacha that was done in the Mishkan is listed here in the Mishnah, which I will say, in other words, what does that mean? So if you notice again, there's repetition in the malachos. In other words, some of the malachos that are mentioned, like we just said over here, I will say, if you think about it just a moment, Zoreh, Borer, Zoreh, Borer, Miraked, right, are all the same thing. So why are they listed? Because essentially anything that was done in the Mishkan was listed in the Mishnah. So why don't you also Rashi afagav deika achrisi behadod dedamila chashvinu l'tarvayu ka'avos va'afagav dechadininu. So we'll say, so interestingly enough, you could have, what the Gemara is pointing out over here, is you could have certain avos that are really similar. They're really similar. It's kind of just like what we saw yesterday, that the concept of notea and zorea. So we'll say, if you think about that, that's the same av malacha, notea and zorea. They're both planting. Just notea happens to be with like trees, plants, and zorea is with seeds, but it's the same malacha. So the point that the Gemara is making over here is you have some malachas that really on a technical level are really the same malacha. They're really the same malacha, but because they were all done in the Mishnah, therefore they are mentioned. So I say the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, v'lichshov nami kotesh, why not also go ahead and include pounding? So we'll say, look at Rashi, v'lichshov nami kotesh, chitin b'machteshes, lahasir kli pasan, dahave b'mikdash b'salmonim. So we'll say, interestingly enough, what about kotesh? Kotesh is the act of pounding. So Rashi just points out over here, you could pound wheat in order to go ahead and remove the husks, remove the shells from the kernels. They also did this by herbs, that they would pound the herbs in order to be able to prepare it for the production of dye. Interesting enough, so ketisha, pounding, right? Kesisha is not mentioned in the Mishnah. Presumably, why? Because at the end of the day, the assumption is that kesisha would be the same thing halacha l'maisa as dash, as threshing. Yet again, so you see from here that even when something is similar, it's not necessarily mentioned. So we'll say, so why isn't that mentioned? Amar Abaye, shekin ani ochel pito below kesisha. So Abaye says, because a poor person would go ahead and eat his bread without pounding it. So kesisha apparently again is not a universal. It's not a universal malacha. Rava Amar Hamani Rebbe Hida Amar Avos Malachos Arbaim Chaser Achos. So Rava says, because remember again, who does the Mishnah reflect? The Mishnah reflects the view of Rebbe. And what does Rebbe say? There are 39 malachos. The Gemara says, Chashiv Kosesh Habile Arbaim. And again, on a very simple level, if you include kesisha, right? If you include pounding, then what? You're going to have a total of 40 malachos, not 39 malachos. Why don't you go ahead and just take out one of the other malachos? So also, in other words, what the Gemara is acknowledging over here is that there is repetition amongst the malachos, right? So in other words, there are definitely malachos that are quoted more than once, right? Certain malachos that ultimately are repetitive. So why not take out one of the other repetitive ones and put it in kesisha? Ella mechavar tekida Abaye. Rather, says the Gemara, it would appear that Abaye's answer is clear. What did Abaye say? So remember again, Abaye's position was that halacha l'maisa, because let's say again, kesisha is not a necessity for the production of bread. V'haraya, I guess poor man's bread was often made without a pounding of, it was non-pounded flour, non-pounded grain. So because it's not a necessity, therefore it's not included. Good. So again, just to be clear, if one were to pound wheat in order to go ahead and halacha l'maisa remove the chaff, the kernels from the chaff, one would still be chayiv for that, because at the end of the day, that is the malacha of dash, but it's just not mentioned because it wasn't universally, it wasn't a malacha that always occurred for the production of bread. Tanrabanan, hayu lefan of mine ochlin. We'll say if a person had multiple, this is incredible. Now we get to the halachas of borer, right? The service. Remember again, borer, what we call separating, is a tolda of dash, right? So the av malacha, the primary malacha, is threshing. Why do you thresh something? You thresh in order to separate the good from the bad, or really to separate out the bad from the good. So therefore, a tolda of dash, an offshoot or secondary malacha associated with dash, is borer, separating on Shabbos. So here we go. Tan Rabbanan, hayu lefanav, meaning ochlin. If a person had in front of him many different types of food, so what's the halacha? Borer va'ochel, borer umaniach. He could go ahead, and I will say this lashon means, borer va'ochel means he could separate out what he wants and eat it. Borer umaniach. And he could go ahead and separate out what someone else wants so that they could eat it. So I could do borer I could separate out what I want for myself, and I could separate what and leave it for someone else. However, velo yivrar, but you shouldn't do borer. Ve'imbirer, and if you did do borer, you separated chayiv chatos. You're chayiv chatos. So we'll say, so quite a strange brisa, right? So the brisa teaches me three things. Number one, or four things. Number one, I could do borer for myself. I could do borer for someone else. That's lesson 1 and 2, right? The next lesson is don't do borer, right? I'm sorry. Velo yivrar, don't do borer. That's lesson number 3. And lesson number 4 is if you did do borer, you're chayiv chatos. What's going on over here? So my kamar. So what is this talking about? So amar ula hachi kamar. This is what it means to say. I'll say here we go. Borer va'ochel lebo bayom, uborer umaniach lebo bayom. So we'll say the halacha is. So the Gemara, I'm not saying the halacha is. The Gemara is suggesting that the halacha is you can do bar. Now, also remember again the act of separating in a vacuum. Generally, how is borer done? You separated out the bad from the good. That's generally, again, how borer was done. Because remember, all of this is modeled after threshing. How would you thresh? So I'll say, again, what you would do when you would thresh is you would remove the chaff. You would remove the chaff. The chaff is the psolas. It's the stuff you don't want. So the way the malacha of borer was performed is you removed the chaff from the kernels. So now the Gemara is trying to understand the brisa. Right? The brisa essentially says, I can't do borer for myself, I can't do borer for someone else, I can't do borer, and if I do borer, I'm chayiv chatos. So now we're trying to understand the parameters of this halacha. So here we go. So Ula says, borer va'ochel lebo bayom, borer umaniach lebo bayom. So Ula says, when is it permitted to do borer? When you're doing it for Shabbos. So if you need to do borer for your Shabbos consumption, then you could do that for yourself, and you could also even do that for someone else. As long as what? As long as it is for today. As long as it is for Shabbos. However, ulamachar lo yivrar. But you cannot do borer, so you cannot engage in an act of separating to benefit yourself on the weekday. Right? You can't do it for tomorrow. Ve'imbirer, and if you did go ahead and do an act of borer, ultimately, again, to benefit from that on the weekday, chayiv chatos. Ultimately, again, then you're chayiv chatos. We'll say, so the Ula is explaining this is that halacha l'maisa borer is permitted as long as you're doing it for Shabbos. But the moment you do borer, ultimately for the weekday, you're going to be chayiv chatos. Maskei for Rav Chisda. Chisda doesn't make any sense. V'chi mutar la'afos lebo bayom, v'chi mutar levasha lebo bayom. I don't understand. We'll say malachos are asar. It doesn't make a difference if you do a malacha to benefit for today, you do a malacha to benefit for tomorrow, right? If a malacha is a malacha, then it's asr on Shabbos. For example, the Ula says, are you allowed to cook for today, right? You're allowed to cook as long as it's for Shabbos. You just can't cook for Sunday. No such thing like that, right? No such thing. Halacha l'maisa again, because bishul, because ofer, because cooking, because baking is a malacha, you can't do it for Shabbos, can't do it for Matzah Shabbos. The Gemara says, you're right. Borer va'ochel pachos mikashir, Borer umaniach pakos mishir. So Rav Chisda says, rather, what does it mean? You could do borer. When can you do borer bosai? When you're doing borer less than the prohibited shear. Now remember again, whenever it comes to anything to do with food items, the shear for Shabbos is a grogeres, right? Is a dried fig. So Rav Chisda is suggesting borer is permitted as long as you're doing it with less than a dried fig's worth of food. So if you're doing it with less than a shear, less than the amount, then it's permitted. More than the shear, it is asr and chayiv chatos. So the Gemara says, Bar va'ochel, right? Bar va'chbachos kashir, bar umanech pachos min kashir, ukashir lo yivar. But if you do borer on the requisite amount, on the size of a grogeres, then what? Lo yivar, v'imbir chayiv chatos. So Maskil Rav says that doesn't make any sense. V'chi mutter le'afos pachos min kashir? I don't understand. Do we take, let's say, by baking or by cooking, that you could cook on Shabbos as long as you're doing cooking less than the shear? But the moment you go ahead and you cook more than the shear, I'm sorry, if it's less than the shear, that you could do it. It's only if it's the shear that you're chai. We don't say that, right? So we don't say that by Hilchos Shabbos. By Hilchos Shabbos, if something is aser, then ultimately, again, even less than the shear is aser. Now, while it is true, there may not be liability for pachos mikashir, for less than the requisite amount, but lamaisa, it is still aser. Amar Rav Yosef, rather, Rav Yosef says as follows: Borer va'ochel biyad, borer umaniach biyad. So Rav Yosef says, when is borer permitted? Borer is permitted when you're doing it by hand and not with a separating utensil. But the Gemara says, borer umaniach biyad, bekanon ubetamchui. But if ultimately you do it with a kanon, so kanon is a funnel. Kanon is a funnel, and tamchui is a large plate. Lo yivror, you should not do borer with utensil. However, v'imbira, but if you did do borer with utensil, pater aval aser. Ultimately, yes, if you did borer with a utensil. Now, utensil like a funnel and a large plate are not, say, utensils that were normally used for borer. Not normally used for separating. Now, they can be used, you could utilize them, but they're not borer specific utensils. However, aval aser, but if you use a sieve or a sifter, which are utensils that are miyuchad, are set aside for borer, then what? Lo yivrar, you can't do borer with them. The imbira, but if you did do borer, chayiv chatos. Ultimately, again, one is chayiv chatos under those circumstances. So I will say, this is actually very interesting. So now, Rav Yosef comes along and explains that when is borer permitted? Borer is only permitted when you're doing it biyad. You're doing it with your hand. Doing it with your hand. But the moment that you use a utensil, it becomes asr. Now, depending on the nature of the utensil, will determine the isser. If you don't use a borer specific utensil, rather use like a funnel or a large plate, you're only chayiv midrabanan. But if you use a utensil that is designated for borer, like a sieve or a sifter, you will be chayiv midaoraisa. Maskiv Rav Hamnuna raises the kasha. He says, I don't understand. Midi kanun v'tamchui katani. I don't understand. Did the Brisa say anything about funnels and plates? In other words, you're adding words into the Brisa. Rav Hamnuna says, what does it mean? Borer va'ochel, here we go. Say borer va'ochel, ochel mitoch hapsolas. Borer umaniach, ochel mitoch hapsolas. So we'll say, listen to this. Says Rav Hamnuna, when is borer permitted on Shabbos? When is it permitted? When you separate out the good from the bad. In other words, they're both saying, the definition of borer, as we said before, is normally separating out the bad from the good, right? When you thresh and when you winnow, so what are you doing? You're separating out the bad from the good. I will say, I'll illustrate this for you in the easier. What's winnowing? We saw this in Rashi yesterday. What's winnowing? You stick your pitchfork into the grain, you throw it up in the air, and the wind blows away the chaff. The wind blows, and you're left with the kernels. So I want to point out, that's borer. The definition of borer is you remove impurities from what you want, which for our purposes means the impurities we call psolas. So Rav Hamnuna says that ultimately, again, what's borer? What's the prohibited act of borer? That is removing that which is prohibited, or that which you don't want. I shouldn't say prohibited. The psolas, the stuff you don't want, from the stuff you do want. Therefore, says Rav Hamnuna, if you remove ochel mitoch psolas, if you go ahead and you remove that which you want from the mixture, whether you do that for yourself or you do that for someone else, that is permitted. However, psolas mitoch ochel. But I will say, if you go ahead and you remove that which you don't want, right? The psolas from the food, that which you do want. So the Gemara says, lo yiver, you should not do this. Ve'imbirer chayiv chatas. And if you did do this, ultimately, again, it is asur midorais yechayiv chatas. Maskef Abaye, Abaye is the cash. I don't understand. Midi ochel mitoch psolas katani, right? Says Abaye, but does the Brisa doesn't say that. Right, the Brisa doesn't say that the only way that you're permitted to perform an act of separation is to remove the ochel, that which you want, from the psolas, from that which you don't want. Ella amra Abaye, rather Abaye says, here's how you interpret the Brisa: borer va'ochel la'alter, ubar umaniach li'alter. Rather Abaye says, what you are permitted to do is separate out what you want as long as you're using it for immediate use, or in this case, immediate consumption. Ulabo bayom lo yivar. But we'll say, what can't you do? You can't engage in an act of bar, an act of separating for some time later on in the day. In other words, you could do borer as long as you need it right now. But if you don't need it right now, but you can need it later on today, you can't do borer. Or I should say, if you did do borer, v'imbirer naaseh kiborer la'otzer v'chayiv chatas. And if you did do that, in other words, if you engage in an act of separation now for later use, that is no different than separating and storing it in your warehouse or in your silo. It will be chayiv chatos. So Amruha Rabbanan Kamei de Rava. So the rabbis said this in front of Rava. Amr Lahu Shaper Amr Nachmani. And he said Nachmani, we'll say it was Abaye, right? Abaye said good. I like Abaye's interpretation. So we'll say, so I just want to point out, because what we just read was a fundamentally important halacha. In other words, we'll say we know the act of, we're all familiar with the malacha of borer on Shabbos. And in fact, the malachos of borer are gleaned exactly from this daf. See, I will say, how can you do borer on Shabbos? This happens all the time. You have a salad. There's stuff you want in the salad, stuff you don't want in the salad. So, or any mixture. I will say, as we're going to see also, borer is not limited to food items, right? Borer is any mixture of items. And let's say you want part of the mixture, you don't want the other part of the mixture. So how do you do borer on Shabbos? So we'll say there are three criteria, right? Miyad, biad, and ocha mitoch psolas. Miyad means that you could separate out something for immediate use. That's miyad, immediately. Biad, with your hands. Now, your hands doesn't have to mean your hands. It could also mean a fork, right? But what it means is you cannot use a utensil that is normally used for borer. And number three, ochel mitoch psolas. You're only permitted to take that which you want and remove that from the mixture, leaving behind the stuff that you don't want. What you can't do is remove the stuff that you don't want from the mixture. So miyad, biad, ocha mitoch psola. So just to illustrate this very quickly, you have a salad on Shabbos, and ultimately, again, there's tomatoes, there's cucumbers, there's lettuce, and you don't like tomatoes. So again, whereas during the week, you may go ahead and choose to pick out the tomatoes from your salad and put that on the side. Halacha l'maisa on Shabbos, one could not do that, for that would be borer. Because remember again, what are you doing in that case? You're taking psolas mitoch ochel. You're taking that which you don't want from that which you want. So what you can do in that kind of case is separate out everything else from the tomatoes and leave the tomatoes behind. Again, assuming you do it for immediate use, assuming ultimately, again, you do it with your hand, right? In other words, a non-borer utensil, and ultimately, again, it is food from psolas. I'm sorry. How you the fun of shnei minei ochlin? Because a person has two types of food in front of him. Ubirer. I'm sorry. How you the fun of shnei minei ochlin? Ubirer va'achal, ubirer v'hiniach. So what did he do? So we'll say ultimately, again, he goes ahead and he separates out and eats, and separates out for himself and for others. Rav Ashi, masni pater. Rabbi Yirmiyah Difti, masni chayiv. So Rav Ashi said, in that case, that's okay. Right, that's okay. And Rabbi Yirmiyah said that you're chayiv. Rav Ashi, masni pater, v'hatani chayiv. How could Rav Ashi say that you're pater? Before we said that you're chayiv, lo kashya. Ha bekana v'tamchui. Ha benafa v'kavra. I suppose it's very interesting. So I will say, this case is assuming over here that you're dealing with a utensil. So as we saw before, I will say, if you do borer with a utensil, it's aser. The nature of the isser depends on what? The type of utensil you're using. If you're using just a general utensil, a non-borer specific utensil, then even like a funnel or a large plate, that will only be aser midirabanan. But halacha l'maisa, if you use a real borer utensil, like a sieve or a sifter, that'll be asr midaraisa. So the Gemara says, Kias Rav Dimi Amr Shabsa de Rabibi Havi. So when Rav Dimi came along, right, when Rav Dimi came along, Amar, he said, Shabsa de Rav Bibi Havi. So it was the Shabbos of Rav Bibi. Now, what's the Shabbos of Rav Bibi? Look at Rashi, second wide line in Rashi. Shabsa de Rav Bibi Havi. Higia Yom Aliyos Omeid Umishamish Al Talmidim. So we'll say, so the Talmidim themselves would take turns, like, helping out, serving the food. So it was Rav Bibi's Shabbos to go ahead and serve the Talmidim. So what happened? So says the Gemara, so he says, Ve'iklo Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi. Rabbi Asi came along, and what did Rabbi Bibi do? Shada kamayu kal kala de peri. So Rabbi Bibi kind of spilled out a bowl of fruit in front of the Talmid. In other words, instead of serving the fruit to each one, he went ahead and he spilled out a bowl of fruit in front of them. So Rabbi says, so interestingly enough, so what happened? So Rav Dimi said, V'lo yedana, when I saw this, I didn't know. Look at Rashi. V'shada kamayhu v'lo ratza livra ha'ocha mitoch ha'alin v'lo says lifnei kol echad ve'echad ela shatchan v'hem notlin v'ochlin ubishituach zen nifrash ocha mi'av. So listen to this. What was the concern? In this bowl of fruit, there was fruit, there were leaves, there was a whole bunch of stuff. So apparently, what did Rav Bibi do? So Rav Bibi took the bowl and he kind of spilled it out on the table. So Rav Dimi sees this and he says, "V'lo yedana im yishum desavra ochim mitok psolas aser im yishum ayin yafehu dimechavin." And I wasn't sure when he did this. Was he doing this in order to make things look plentiful? That's what it means when it says ayin yafa, to make it look like there's plentiful food, and therefore he spilled it out on the table to show how much there is. Or did he do it to avoid borer? Because I will say again, had he served each Talmud, he might have inadvertently done borer. By spilling it out on the table, the fruit and the leaves, everything separates out. So the point that Gemara is making over here is that Rav Dimi wasn't sure, Rav Dimi wasn't sure why Rav Bibi did what he did. But this does teach us another important nekuda for halacha also, which is that ultimately borer is only aser if there is a mixture. The moment you go ahead and remove the mixture, there is no longer a problem of borer. So one of the things one could do, this doesn't really work with food, but it can work with other things like silverware, because if you have a bunch of silverware, I will say that's also a mixture, and potentially picking a one out of the pile could be a potential of borer. So I will say, but again, halacha l'maisa, anytime you spread something out, that kind of takes away the mixture status, and therefore there's no longer any borer. So the Gemara goes, Chizkiya Amar, Habor turmisim mitok psolas shalahan chayif. If one goes there, I will say, so turmisin was a type of lentil. So Rashi says, Habor turmisin, lachar sheshalkanhu, bora ochel mitoch haklipa. So first what you would do, I will say, is you would cook the turmisin, you would cook these lentils, and then afterwards you would separate out the lentil from its shell. So the Gemara says, Habor turmisim mitok psolas shalahan chayif. If one goes ahead and separates out the turmisin from the psolas from the shal yerchayiv, lema kasav Chizkiya, ocha mitok psolas aser. It must be that Chizkiya holds that even separating out ocha from psolas, even separating out the good from the bad, is going to be aser. So right, because otherwise, I will say, remember again, I understand if you tell me I can't take away the shells and throw them out, but if you tell me I can take, why shouldn't I be able to take the lentil from the shell? That's ocha mitoch psolas. To which the Gemara says, shiny turmisin, the lentils are different amid bays, the shalkile shiva zimni. Because ultimately, again, remember, turmisin apparently had to be cooked very thoroughly, had to be cooked 7 times. V'ilo shaklile misrach, ukipsolas mitoch ochel dami. Ultimately, again, I will say, and if you don't remove the beans very quickly from the shell, everything becomes disgusting. And therefore, again, it really has the appearance of taking psolas from ochel. Now, what does this mean? Look at Rashi. V'ilo shakli la'ocha mitoch hapsolas shurach b'nimok aydi shenishla karbe misrach v'hilchach olchal nami kolzman shemu'urav ba havi kipsolas. So I said this is actually very interesting. So the Gemara is suggesting over here that because the bean, this lentil is cooked many times, so essentially if it's not removed, the whole thing spoils. So the Gemara suggests that maybe even the bean, when it is inside of the shell, has a shtickle status ultimately of psolas itself, and therefore removing the lentil ultimately again from the shell could have the status of psolas mitoch elchol. Then I will say now in general in hilchos borer, so we assume that an item inside of a shell is not a mixture. In other words, I will say, for example, peeling an orange is not borer. You'll say, why not? The peel is the psoles. The peel is the psoles, is the stuff you don't want. And by peeling the orange, I'm actively removing the psoles min ha'ochel, which is borei. You're not allowed to do that. So I'll say, but I can't peel an orange on Shabbos. Why? Because again, remember, certain things like, for example, the orange, the whole thing is an orange, right? The peel is the orange. The orange is the orange. So because that's called one entity, again, that is not called a mixture. We don't view the peel and the fruit as a mixture in the orange. Rather, we see it ultimately as one entity. Good. Let's go back to Amar Papa. Very interesting case. We'll say, Haiman de paris silka. So we'll say if a person goes ahead and cuts up beets. Now we'll say, remember again, in this case, cutting up beets. Paris is more than cutting up. Paris is really like mincing, right? Making very small. Rashi says, mechatcho hadek. You take a beet and you cut it up into very small pieces. Chayiv mishum tochen. Ultimately, again, one is chayiv because of grinding in this circumstance. So we'll say this is actually quite an interesting halacha, right? So remember the malacha of grinding tochen. We see it by wheat, right? What would you do? You would put wheat in a mill and you would grind it into flour. So what the Gemara now is suggesting over here is as follows: that if you go ahead and you cut something up into very small pieces, that's also called techina. That's also called grinding and will be asur on Shabbos. So we'll say, so again, the Gemara gives other examples. Haiman, Amar Menashe, Haiman de solis silsi, right? If one were to go ahead, I will say, so solis silsi means you go ahead and you take very small pieces, you take pieces of wood and you make them even smaller. Chayiv mishum tochen. Again, the act of taking something large and reducing it into smaller pieces is the malacha of tochen, the malacha of grinding. Amar Rashi, and when cutting the wood, if you're makbid on the size of the smaller pieces, not only is it tochen, but rather ultimately it is also mechatech, cutting something according to measure, cutting something according to the size. So I will say, so I just want to point out this concept that the malacha of tochen, of techina, of grinding up, of cutting something up into very small pieces has significant ramifications. So let's say again, I'm preparing a salad on Shabbos, and I like to prepare like an Israeli salad. So I like to cut up the vegetables in very small pieces. Sounds like from the Gemara over here that halacha l'maisa that would be asr alts the malacha of tochen. So this is a big machlokes. This is a big machlokes Rishonim and Achronim about this. Many say that as long as halacha l'maisa you're cutting up the salad and you're cutting it into very small pieces and you're going to eat it. In other words, you're cutting it up for now, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. There is a problem, perhaps if you do that and aren't going to eat it until later. That's problematic. Others like Shmir Shabbos Kilchos Paskins that know cutting food up into very small pieces is actually the malacha of tochen. Shomzal Paskins that cutting up vegetables into very small pieces is the malacha of tochen. So it's interesting. So Shmir Shabbos brings down, so how much is small, right? In other words, how do you define this? Like how much is small? So he gives a very interesting definition. He says, any piece that's so small that you could swallow it without chewing, that's the malacha of tochen. That's malacha tochen. Rabbi say, but I would tell you that there's definitely a very large number of poskim that hold none of this as an issue. In other words, cutting up food into very small pieces. And again, I want to point out, this certainly doesn't apply. Like if you have a piece of meat on your plate, let's say you happen to like very small pieces. That's not. It's talking about preparation, right? Not b'shas achila, not at the moment you're eating. So again, just understand, one should ideally avoid cutting food into small pieces on Shabbos for later use. But if let's say one is making a salad right before the meal, you're gonna have lunch. You're making the salad right now. It's not a problem to go ahead and cut the food into small pieces. To make a salad, Shabbos morning for Shalosh Shuddis, and if you're cutting small pieces, that should be avoided. That should be avoided, halacha l'maisa. All right, so the Gemara goes weiter. A lot of really good halachas over here. Halosh va'ofes. We'll say next, lush is kneading, ofe is baking. Amra Papa, Shavak Tana Didan Bishul Samanda Mishkan, Vinakat Ofer. So also listen to this. So Rapapa raises the fundamental question. But saying Rashi already mentioned this. The Mishnah, the opening malachos of the Mishnah are what we call in halacha Sidura de Pas. The malachos necessary for the baking of bread. So again, Rav Papa is very bothered by this. Because Rav Papa says, I don't understand. Why are we talking about the baking of bread? Remember again, the malachos of Shabbos, stem from that which was done in order to go ahead and build the Mishkan. So baking of bread has nothing to do with the building of the Mishkan. So what the Tana does is, the Tana uses bread, the malachos of bread, kind of as the framework to build out the first construct of malachos. But why not use the creation of dye? I was going to say it's pretty much the same thing. It's the same malachos in the production of bread and the production of dyes. But yet dyes were necessary for the construction of the Mishkan. So why go ahead and use bread as your guiding light for the production of bread? In other words, that the malachos necessary for the production of bread are the avos malachos. Why not use dyes? So says the Gemara. Tana didan sidur de pasnakin, because the Tana chose instead to use what we call sidur de pas. Rashi says sidur de pas shehischil bo nakat va'ofe b'makom bishol the samanahu ta'i bishol bas. Well, so that's why. So the Mishnah chooses to arrange avos malachos in what we call sidur de pas, utilizing or highlighting the malachos used for the creation of bread. That's why Rabbi say in the last of this unit we use ofe baking instead of bishol. Right? Remember again, baking is what's done for bread. Bishul, which uses a liquid medium, would normally be done for samemanim. So instead, Chazal made a conscious decision that when codifying the malachos in the Mishnah, identified the malachos as part of the bread baking process. Now, there's a very simple reason for this also. Remember again, this was done also to allow people to remember what the malachos were. Because also remember again, most people were probably not versed in the art of making dyes, but they were versed in what? In the act of baking bread. Therefore, as a way of making sure that people would remember the construct of malachos, Chazal determined it, or I should say, framed it as sidura de pas. To which the Gemara says, Amar Rav Acha Rav Avira, Hayman deshada sichsa la'asuna chay mishum mevashas. What's the interesting case? If a person goes ahead and puts a peg, a person fashioned a wooden peg, and to finish off the peg, they went ahead and they put it in the oven to harden. That's called bishul, right? One is chaim mishum mevashas. Bishul doesn't only apply to food, right? So using a medium of heat to create a finishing process is also called bishul. So if you take a wooden peg, and apparently the way they would finish the complete the process of the wooden peg was to put it in the oven, you're chaim mishum bishul. So Pshita the Gemara says that's obvious. Now the what I've thought, lishariyei mana kamechavein. All I'm doing is what? I'm putting it in the oven to harden it. So I might have thought that halacha l'maisa, that because it's being hardened, then ultimately again, it's not bishul. As we'll say, the Gemara assumes that the malach of bishul requires for something to become soft through the process of cooking. But if something is made hard, then halacha l'maisa, again, that's not called bishul. Kamashmula demir farafi v'hadur kamet. We'll say again, when you quote unquote put the peg in the oven first it softens, and then ultimately again it hardens. So we'll say, so this havamina, interestingly enough, that in order for it to be bishul, it has to soften, is not really one that is accepted halacha l'maisa. Amar Rav Huna, hayman da'arsich kufra chay mishum mevashas. We'll say if you boil up a pitch, right? You take pitch, right, and you go ahead and you boil it up, that's bishul. Pshita, that's obvious. We'll say anytime you take heat and you bring something to a boil, and even less than a boil, that is going to be bishul. I've thought, Kevan tahadar v'ikusha imalo. I'm was it that once the pitch cools down, it's going to harden again. So since it's going to harden again, therefore what? Therefore maybe I should not be chay because of bishul. To which the Gemara says, Kamashlan, that's not the case. That I will say heating something up on Shabbos to a point, again, we'll discuss how hot, but well, actually we've seen it already. Certainly a boil, but even Yad Soledes Bo, right? Even that temperature at the hand would recoil, ultimately again will be Asr on Shabbos, even if the item will subsequently cool back down. Or I should say, return, or as well as more than just cool back down. It's go back to its original state. Nevertheless, that's still called bishul. Good. Amarava, Haiman David Chavisa, Chay Mishum Shevachato. So we'll say if a person makes a barrel, the act of making a barrel on Shabbos is in violation of 7 malachas. Vit and Tanura, if you make an oven, Chay Mishum Shmona Chato. So we'll say, so Rashi lists all of the malachos involved over here. If you look at Rashi, he says over here, we'll just do quickly, he says, Sheva Chatos, Tochein Haragavim, Vishochakan, right? You go ahead and you have to grind up the clouds of earth, right? Havi Tochein. Borer, he goes on, Losh, needing, we're not going to go through it all now, but you look at Rashi, Ayin Sham, for all of the malachos involved ultimately in the creation of a barrel, and then ultimately again the malachos involved in the creation of an oven. Amar Abaye, Haiman David Chilsa, Chayiv Achat Esrei Chatos. So we'll say, Abaye says, if you go out and you make a chilsa, what's a chilsa? Rashi says, Kaveresh Shalkanim. If you're going to make a trap, right? Literally, again, you make a trap out of reeds on Shabbos. Ultimately, again, you are chayiv for 11 chatos. V'chayti lepume, and if you stitch up the opening, chayiv 13 chatos. You're chayiv 13 chatos. So we'll say, so you see that Rashi, again, on your own, Rashi lists all of the different chatos that one is liable to. Good. Hagozes is at Samar Vamalavno. If one shears wool or cleans the wool, one is chayiv on Shabbos. Amar Barav Chana, first wide line, ayin dalad on the days. So Rabbi Yochanan, hatava tzemer shal gabi behema b'Shabbos chayiv 3 chatos. Achas mishum gozes, va'achas mishum menafes, va'achas mishum tav. Listen to this interesting case. Rabbi Yochanan says, what happens if you go ahead and you spin the wool, right? You spin the wool while the wool is still attached to the sheep. So the Gemara says, you're chayiv for 3 malachos. What are the 3 malachos? Gozes is the act of shearing. Now the truth is, you're not chayiv for shearing until you actually cut the wool off the animal. Menafes, combing, and tava, weaving or spinning, right? And we'll say, now this is a case where the wool is still attached to the animal. Rav Kahana Amar, no. Ein derech giza bakach. This is a non-normative act. Also, it's not how you normally spin wool. Normally, first you shear the wool, you clean the wool, you comb the wool, but it's detached from the animal. In this case, you're doing all of this to the wool while the wool is attached to the animal. That is not normal. That's not the normal case, and therefore one will not be chayiv. So the Gemara says, Rav Kana Amar, ein derech geziza bakach, ein derech menafes bakach, ein derech tarech bakach. Velo, is that true? The Gemara says, is that true? That this is not the normal way to shear, not the normal way to comb, and not the normal way to spin. Vatanya, we learned, Shatov be'izim and Tavo be'izim. Supposed to listen to this. This is talking about by the Mishkan. Alma Tevia al Gabi Behema, Shma Tevia. So we'll say, interesting enough, if you look at Rashi for just a moment over here, it's Rashi Shatov be'izim. It's right in the middle of the wide lines. Shatov be'izim v'Tavo be'izim. Kra Kadarish. Tavu es ha'izim. So we'll say the pasuk, when it speaks out the spinning of the wool by the Mishkan, says tavu es ha'izim, which literally means they spun the sheep. That's literally what it means. They spun the sheep. Now we translate it as they spun the wool that came from the sheep. But the Gemara actually dashes over here that when they created the woolen curtains for the Mishkan, they actually went ahead and first cleaned, combed, and spun the wool while it was still attached to the sheep. And only afterwards did they detach it from the sheep. So you see that that's quote unquote normal, to which the Gemara says, no. Chachma Yisera Shaini. They will say that's a Chachma Yisera, right? In the Mishkan, there was an unusual level of wisdom in the creation and fabrication of the Mishkan, the ability to do this, to clean the wool, to go ahead and clean the wool, to comb the wool, to weave it while it's still on the sheep, and then to remove it. Most people can't do that. Therefore, again, if you or I were to try that, that's called the non-normative act, and halacha l'maisa, one would not be chayv nashas. Suppose let's just finish. So the Gemara says, Tan Rabbanon hatolish esaknaf va'komto va'marto chayv shalosh chatos. So we'll say if a person goes there, we'll stop over here. We'll pick up Emirat Hashem with this Tan Rabbanon Emirat Hashem tomorrow. Shkacha will say, I would urge you chazer this daf because there's an incredible amount of halacha l'maisa in this daf as well. We'll start davening in just a few moments.